Hi there, Marilyn here. Thanks for joining me. In this video, I'm going to show you how I quilted a small quilt project for my new dog. I used some basting spray on the fabric before applying the chalk through the stencil. Watching this video will give you an idea of how to do it and how it works. I have my top laying on my cutting mat and it's not sandwiched. I'm going to spray it with this basting spray. I'm putting a rather light coat on because I don't think it needs a lot, and you can see me spraying it, and unfortunately my camera view is cut off, so that's why it kind of stops. I'm actually spraying enough to fit the whole stencil in the area that I spray. So next you will see me take this stencil and apply it over the top of the freshly sprayed fabric. I press it once it's in position and it sticks. It's really nice. So once it's pressed into that basting spray, you take your pounce pad, and in this case I'm using a pink chalk, and I'm just going to swipe my pad over the pattern. Notice how I take a short brushy stroke. I know a lot of educators out there like to tap the pad heavily at first, and then they just spread out the chalk that comes out. I like to have it come out a little bit more evenly, so I do prime the pad every once in a while to keep the chalk flowing, but if you do a light touch over your stencil and just keep it moving, it will apply it very nicely and evenly. And see how it sticks? It's like peeling off a post-it note. It's really nice. So I have a pretty small project here. It's going to take 2.5 repeats. I'm just going to slide this over so you can see, and I'm going to do the exact same thing again. Spray it with the basting spray, put the stencil over using that registration mark to line it up, press it down, apply the chalk, and rinse and repeat till you get to the edge. Since it's only a half of a stencil basically that's needed, it was just a little bit left over and not enough for a full repeat, so you just go off the edge. Not a problem. And I'm going to move on to the next row, do the same thing again, and you can watch how it sticks on there, peels off, the chalk stays on there extremely well, so that when I am ready to sew this, the line is not going to bounce off or disappear on me in any way. I have half a row left. I'm going to apply the basting spray and then position my stencil. It's okay if it goes over the edge. You just make sure that what's on the fabric gets transferred, and it's just like what you saw me do continually from the beginning of this. Slide it over, line up the registration mark, transfer it, and fill in this last row, and then we will be ready to sew. Before we sew, however, I'm going to clean off this stencil. When the basting spray is sprayed on the fabric and then you stick it to the stencil, anything that is loose on the fabric is going to stick to the stencil, such as lint and threads. I used a piece of batting to wipe it with before I applied some water to remove any residue left over from the basting spray. I used what was within my reach, a bottle of water and a piece of batting. A paper towel is also a good choice to dampen and wipe with. You can do it how I'm doing it, or if you have a spray bottle, that's even better. I should have used my spray bottle, but the camera was rolling and my bottle was empty. I'm wiping the side that was always in contact with the fabric and the basting spray. My goal on this side is to remove any residue from that basting spray. The water removes it well. A damp sponge would also work very well. I'll then turn it over, and I'm going to wipe off any chalk, because this was the side that the chalk was applied on. It's still a bit damp. To dry it, a good way to dry it is to put it something heavy on the edge of a table to hold it by the corner and just have it hang freely. Now we're going to go to pinning. I don't know why I didn't just use a basting spray. Next time I will. It's a small project, so pinning's really not a big deal. And since I have it all marked, I'm going to try to put the pins where I don't need to move them as I'm stitching. Now it's time to take it over to my sewing machine. I'm just going to follow this line from one edge of the quilt to the other in all one continuous motion. See how nice the chalk is staying on? It's not a problem at all to follow this line and have it stay where it needs to stay. This little project has been really fun. The pattern for it is free. It's one of those that start with a 10-inch square, and after a few cuts and twists of the pieces, you have the block that makes up this quilt. I'll put a link to the pattern in the description. Anybody can do this on any machine with any skill level. Now I'm on that final row. I wanted to show you how we travel between the disconnected lines. This is the one that had less than a full repeat of the stencil when we were transferring it. You'll get to a point where you run off the edge of the quilt. I simply travel along the edge. It's all going to be covered up in your binding, so you use it to get from the end of one chalk line to the beginning of the next. you're finished sewing, it's time to remove the pins. After you have all the pins out, take a brush to remove any of the chalk that is still on the quilt. Use your lint brush or a shoe brush like this one. Either work great, and take your time brushing it thoroughly. Finish up the binding and you're done. There it is, all finished. Here's a close-up shot. Here's my sweet puppy Marcel, who's going to enjoy this quilt. Now that you've seen how easy it is to get a good transfer of your stencil onto your quilt top and have the chalk stay in place the whole time you're working on your quilt, I hope you're inspired to give it a try on your next project. Make something beautiful today. Happy quilting.